Hello, Ken. How are you this fantastic evening?
Dan, all the better for being with you for the first time in the new year.
Yes, you sound slightly different in the new year. What's going on? You been
Well,
smoking a lot of cigarettes or what's going on?
I decided to take on a new habit, smoking cigarettes. Actually, a fun story. A friend of mine did that to make himself feel miserable for a stretch of time, and then he quit so that he could fully appreciate how good it is to not smoke. He's a little nuts, but I appreciate his experiential approach to things. No, I've got allergies going on. We're in Palm Springs right now with some great friends of ours, and the desert is in bloom, and part of it's in bloom in my nose.
Wow. Okay, so tonight we're going to lay claim. I don't even know what that means. So, Ken, please explain.
Yeah, we've talked before about what it means to make resolutions, what it means to be committed to things for the new year, to take on 90-day challenges. All that stuff is great. But I was listening to this really powerful sermon, and the preacher was talking about laying claim to what you wanted for the new year. And I know it's easy to just go to I want a new car and I want material things. But the more he talked, the more I appreciated that what he was talking about was what were the qualities of life that we wanted to lay claim to for the coming year in some fairly broad terms. Do you want to lay claim to good health? Do you want to lay claim to happiness? Do you want to lay claim to joy? Do you want to lay claim to time with your family that's sacrosanct? What are those things that you're actually going to like put the stake in the ground and say, no, I'm not going to fall into the trap of feeling sorry for myself if things go south. I'm going to still be joyful. I'm not going to fall into the trap of saying I got to put in more time at work, even though I know I promised my spouse and my kids I'd be home for dinner. I'm laying claim to these things, and no matter what comes my way, I'm not going to compromise on those because those are the things that truly matter most for me. Those are the things that I claim for my life for the coming year. And so that's the topic of the conversation.
So, when I think of laying claim, I think of growing up in a large family. We had six children, and there was always enough food. We were a very like middle class family, so definitely always food. Thank God for that. But if there was any leftovers, you had to lay claim to those leftovers. And oftentimes it wasn't enough just to say, "Hey, I get those if there's extra." You actually had to eat fast and then literally physically claim it by grabbing it quickly. So, one of my bad habits, I'll say, or at least what my wife tells me and some of my kids comment on, is that I eat very quickly. Where that causes a problem for me is sometimes TMI, but I have a little bit of an esophagus issue. And if I eat quickly, food will get stuck in my esophagus, which is a problem. So, because I care about laying claim to the leftover food, and that's a brought on habit from when there was just a little bit extra, and you had to be the one to get there first and lay claim to it. I developed that bad habit. So, anyway, that's what came to mind when I think of laying claim. Another quick thought is a conversation that I had with one of my children where they were talking about a person they were interested in, and they said they could not consider them because a friend of theirs had essentially laid claim to that person. And I thought, what an interesting concept. And I asked, so that was their ex? And they said, no, they just told me that they were interested in them. And I thought, wait, I'm confused. How does this work? You can just basically, like our topic, lay claim to like I claim that person, they are mine because I am interested. And if you do that, then therefore everyone else is off limits. I just thought that is so interesting. So when I hear this topic, those are the two things that came to mind. One is on food and one is on relationships.
So when I hear you say that, like, bro, I'm interested in her. So you can't go near her. It just strikes me as so like transactional and so interesting that people think they can lay claim to another person, right? As opposed to saying like, what I claim is transformation for my relationship. And if that person is the best person for me, then we'll be drawn to each other. And even if he or she is attracted to somebody else initially, we're going to rise to the top as a couple. That's a transformational instead of transactional approach to relationship. I totally get what you're saying though about the family thing. There was an Italian family that lived near us, and they had 6 kids as well, and they were all boys. And God bless their mother. I just keep saying that to this day. So there were 6 boys plus dad. So basically, she raised 7 boys. And man, laying claim meant taking your fork and stabbing what was in the center. And grabbing the food, and God forbid you should reach for it with your hand if somebody else's fork was going in, because it was going to be trouble. But what I really think about that when I think about this topic is like, what's the thing beyond the claim that keeps me on track? Like if I've laid claim to a person and it doesn't go well, then I feel like I failed. If I've laid claim to a transformative relationship, then if it doesn't work out with that one person, that's okay, because that thing that I've laid claim to is still alive and well. And that is a relationship that transforms me and my partner. And so likewise with anything else, if I lay claim to just a specific thing, sort of a small piece, and it doesn't work out, it's really easy to get discouraged. And my advice would be, what's the bigger thing behind it? What's that thing that calls you into the future? That thing like a relationship transformed, or a family life that is filled with joy and happiness, as opposed to, I have to be home for dinner tonight. I've laid claim to being home for dinner tonight. Oh, I can't. I've blown it. It's like, no, there's a much bigger picture there. Look for the thing that inspires you, that's going to call you forward in this claim that you make.
So I've fortunately never had to be in this position, but I'm aware of how it works. And funny enough, I think it was Walmart who put back the old school layaway program, right? So you couldn't afford something in the moment. So you would put it on layaway, and you would basically make a claim to that item at the store. And then they would allow you to make payments, but not payments after. It's not like a credit system. It was literally, you'd make payments towards the eventually you paid for it. And then you would actually get the claim, right? Like you get the item that you put on layaway. And it reminded me of, I'm recently considering buying a Peloton. And there is, if you're not aware of it, there's a company called Affirm, and there are many like this that have an incredible program. And I encourage you, not financial advice, but my 2 cents on how people should do it. Anytime any company or system offers you 0%, right? So essentially, you're paying the same thing whether you pay up front or pay over time. Always take the payment plan, because the time value of money is way better for you. So you're paying $0 on interest, 0% more. Yes, I will take that every time. So anyway, on the Peloton website, they have a plan where it's like pay it off over X period of months for 0% interest. And I'm like, well, that's way better, because not that I would ever change my mind, but it's like the time value of money is way better in that sense. But then I was also thinking, I bet a lot of people bought a Peloton and they now are listing them on Facebook Marketplace or similar, right? Like on these things, because they realize, wow, I had high hopes in the beginning that I would do something with it, and then I didn't do anything with it. So they'll list it. So I was right, and there are plenty. But like the real estate market, they go very quickly. So one of my strategies in these quick negotiations is you just ask somebody, is this still available? They say, sure. But they'll tell you, if you don't ask, they'll say, I have had a lot of interest. And so one of the ways you can lay claim to something that there's a lot of people vying for the same thing. Well, one, it's easy. You could offer more money. But another way, very creatively, is you can actually just say, hey, what if I sent you a deposit right now? Right? Because everyone else talks like, I'll come tomorrow or whenever to come get it. But I can actually lay claim to it by saying, hey, let me Venmo you, whatever amount of dollars as a deposit. Now they know I'm serious because I put something down on the line to lay claim for that item. So anyway, more thoughts of how laying claim applies to our topic tonight.
I was just telling you, Dan, before we started taping, we bought a new car and we were getting ready to leave over the New Year's holiday. If you've tried buying a car right now, you know how short inventory is, and there were literally 3 cars left on the lot. And I asked our salesman, what's the chance it'll be here in a week when we get back? And he said it's slim to none. But in our parlance right now, if you want to lay claim to it, you can put $500 down, and I will consider that a good faith deposit. And when you get back, take a few days to recover, and then come on in, and your car will be waiting for you. And we did, and we bought it. And it was a really nice feeling because we had some skin in the game. We had laid claim to something that we had researched. And I'll go back to what I was saying earlier. We weren't laying claim to a new car. When we thought about what are the qualities we want to have? We want something reliable. We want something safe. We want something comfortable. Those were the big 3. And so we did a ton of research in advance. We finally settled on this one particular car that met those things. It wasn't the car itself. It was that it met the stuff that we had laid claim to for an investment in buying a car. We get a new car every 7 to 10 years. So this is not a frequent purchase for us. But man, it felt great when he said we could claim this vehicle when we knew there were people on the lot coming in every day who wanted it. And he allowed us to do that. He was the one that was proactive. He was a great salesman. And he knew we were serious. He had developed a relationship with us. And as a result of that, was willing to let us lay claim to something in order that we might get the car that we wanted.
So I know everybody knows the story of the prodigal son. And in it, if you're not familiar, the son who has inheritance, right? He decides to claim it early. And the only reason I even bring that up is because I think there are a lot of lessons you can take away from that. But one of the, I think, big takeaways I want to have on this topic tonight is that you have to think about now and what you're laying claim to in the future. Like you're inheriting something, right? But what you're actually inheriting in life is you're inheriting the result of your habits, right? So if you want to think ahead and think, I want to be here in this future situation, that is what you can lay claim to now by establishing habits today. So I've just switched its semantics. I've switched what people call goals because I believe goals have an implied failure. Like my goal is to have X one day. Well, you may or may not have X one day, but if you just switch that term to say my future reality, then you're basically laying claim to I will have this or be like this or whatever the case may be in the future. You're not saying maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. You're saying, no, this will happen. But it's not a matter of if it'll happen, it's just a matter of when. So you might set a target date for when, and then if it doesn't happen, you just keep going because that is your future reality. So with all that said, I think it's very important that you say this out loud and you actually claim this to other people, like write it down. If you have an accountability partner, like Ken and I might be for each other, then you say it to that other person. You say, Ken, I'm making a commitment to my future reality to have this by my target date of X. And then Ken, as a good coach, would ask me, so what are you going to do to make sure that happens for you? And that's where I get to take the proper actions that lead me in the direction of where I want to go. I want to put a warning into this, though. There is a big thing called dopamine, which you've probably all heard of. And they've realized that the dopamine rush that you get is actually not from achieving a goal or landing at your future reality. It's the anticipation. It's the anticipation of going there. So you actually can let yourself off the hook. So just be aware of where we want you to say, I want to lay claim to my future reality. And then I want to put myself on the line and work towards that. Just be aware that sometimes in doing that, you can actually feel that dopamine rush, right? And it almost feels a sense of relief, and you can almost let yourself off the hook, been there, done that. I feel good enough just saying it versus the journey of heading towards it and actually doing it. So with all that said, if there was one big takeaway from this topic of laying claim, lay claim to your future reality. Decide what you want to inherit for your future self, and then take the action now to lead you on that journey, to lead you on that path where one day you take your inheritance, you get what you properly earned.
So the thing that's great advice, and the thing that I would add to that is that, like Dan was talking about, it's not the daily tasks that you're laying claim to. Those are the things that enable you to get to that thing that you've staked out. They're essential in getting there. They're absolutely essential. That's the inspired action that gets you to where you need to be. But if you keep your focus on that which you've laid claim to, then you infuse those daily activities with some meaning and some sense of anticipation. I will tell you about so dopamine is a neurotransmitter. You can look that up. We're not doctors, but there is absolutely truth to the reality of what Dan was talking about. Years ago, Bob and I were on this plan to like pay off all our debt. And man, the closer we got, it was euphoric. And then there was that one day where I went to all of our credit cards, zero balance, zero balance, zero balance, zero balance. Card, zero balance. It's like, we did it. Had a glass of champagne. It was great. Next morning, I hate to say it was as if it hadn't happened, but it was over and done with. And so, the bigger picture in that was financial freedom and independence, right? That's what we were really laying claim to. And all I had was, I just want to pay off all my credit cards. I want to pay off the car. I want to pay off all of our debt. And I wish I would have elevated that a bit to say, what I'm laying claim to is financial freedom and independence. I think the feeling would have been a bit more long lasting. So as we're venturing into the new year, we're halfway through the first month now. As we're venturing in, it's never too late to start. Think about what you want to lay claim to and do it. Share it with somebody who can hold you accountable and memorialize it by writing it down.
And if you got value from this conversation, this podcast, like Ken said, share it with someone else, pay it forward. But here's the key, and they'll realize this at the very end when they're hearing what I'm about to say, which is tell them you'd like to play a drinking game, and tell them the drinking game is whatever the topic is tonight, which happens to be laying claim. Every time the word laying claim or that phrase is being said, we have to take a drink. And you'll realize that we've said this a lot during this. So this will be incredible. And you can tell them they have to come up with their own. So that'll be for them. And then they'll have to come up with something different where you have to drink too. So you'll dominate them. And don't do this if you're an alcoholic, by the way. But anyway, I hope you got value tonight. Pay it forward and lay claim to your future reality.